There was a moment in Michael Jackson's life that no journalist ever captured, no family member ever fully understood, and no fan ever imagined. A revelation so personal, so life-shifting, that Michael swore he would take it to his grave. He carried it alone for decades, through concerts, through storms of fame, through painful headlines and sleepless nights, through victories that changed the world and tragedies that nearly broke him. And yet, someone eventually found out, not because Michael told them, but because of something he left behind. A hidden piece of his past, a message written in his own hand, a truth strong enough to rewrite everything we thought we knew about him. Tonight, you will discover the story behind the secret Michael Jackson promised never to speak aloud, and the shocking moment someone uncovered it, changing Michael's legacy in a way no one was prepared for. Before the world loved him, before the world judged him, before the world chased and adored him, Michael Jackson was a boy with a truth too heavy to name, and a man terrified that if the world ever learned it, everything he built would crumble. What was the revelation he hid for so long? And who uncovered it years too late? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our emotional and powerful stories about Michael Jackson. The night was unusually quiet at Neverland. Not the peaceful kind of quiet Michael Jackson used to cherish. The quiet filled with laughter from the carousel, the hum of lights along the pathways, or the distant sound of animals settling in for the night. No, this was a heavy quiet, a quiet that felt like the world was holding its breath. Michael stood alone near the large window in his private lounge, watching the moonlit fields of Neverland stretch into darkness. The air carried a coldness he wasn't used to, a silence he couldn't escape. His hands tightened around the edges of a small velvet pouch, so worn around the edges it looked older than the room itself. But the secret inside it, that was older than anyone knew. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of something he had carried for most of his life, something he had promised himself and someone else that he would never reveal, not to fans, not to family, not even to the people he trusted most. Tonight, however, something felt different. Something felt dangerous. His breath fogged faintly against the glass. The wind outside picked up, brushing the trees like a warning whispered through leaves. Michael pulled the velvet pouch closer to his chest. Why tonight? Why was the fear rising again after so many years? Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Instinctively, he hid the pouch beneath his jacket just as the door opened and his longtime bodyguard, Bill Whitfield, stepped inside. Michael? You didn't answer the intercom. You all right? Michael forced a soft smile, the kind he perfected through decades of hiding exhaustion. Just thinking, Bill. It's nothing. But Bill could see the tension in his shoulders, the way Michael's fingers trembled slightly. Sir, Bill said carefully, this isn't like you. You're pacing again. Happens only when something's seriously bothering you. Michael lowered his gaze. Maybe I'm just remembering. Remembering what? Bill asked. Michael hesitated. He wanted to say everything. The late-night meeting years ago. The promise he swore to someone who demanded secrecy. The warning he received afterward. The fear that followed him through the shadows of fame. But instead he whispered, something I shouldn't. He walked toward the fireplace, warming his cold hands against a faint glow. Bill waited, knowing that pushing too hard would only make Michael close off more. The singer's breath steadied just slightly as the warmth reached his skin. You ever keep a secret so big, so heavy, Michael said softly, that it changes the way you breathe, the way you sleep, the way you look at the world? Bill crossed his arms. Everyone's got secrets, but not everyone's are world-changing. Michael turned toward him slowly. Mine is... A chill ran up Bill's spine. Michael rarely spoke with such seriousness, rarely allowed his voice to drop into that fragile register that revealed the truth behind his public smile, the truth of a man who had carried more burdens than most could imagine. Lightning flashed somewhere far beyond Neverland, briefly illuminating the room. Michael flinched, not from the sound, but from the sudden realization of how exposed he felt tonight. Bill stepped closer. Something happened? Michael didn't answer. He walked toward his old writing desk in the corner of the room, the one he hadn't opened in years. Papers were still inside, unfinished lyrics, notes, fragment of poems he wrote during the darkest nights of his life. But tonight, he wasn't reaching for any of them. He was putting something in. He removed the velvet pouch from under his jacket and placed it carefully inside one of the drawers. Bill watched the movement closely. What's in that pouch? Michael froze with the drawer half closed. It's something I should have destroyed years ago, he whispered. Something I thought I could forget. Bill stepped forward. Michael, is someone threatening you again? Michael closed the drawer slowly, almost ceremonially. Not yet. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Sir, Bill said with urgency, if you're in danger, you need to tell me. You don't have to carry whatever this is alone. Michael turned, and for the first time that night, Bill saw real fear in his eyes. That's exactly the problem, Michael murmured. I was alone when it happened, and I stayed alone with it all these years. The wind howled outside. A loose shutter clattered against the house. Michael jumped slightly. His nerves pulled tight. He sank into the chair beside the fireplace, burying his face in his hands. I made a promise, he whispered into his palms. A promise to someone who didn't survive long enough to see what keeping it did to me. Bill froze. Someone didn't survive? Michael, he said slowly, are you telling me the secret involves? Michael lifted his head sharply, eyes wide. Don't say it. Bill closed his mouth. Michael rose suddenly and walked toward the window again. His reflection stared back at him, older, thinner, but still carrying the same fragile hope he had as a boy. Hope that someone, someday, might understand him fully. Bill, the drive back to Encino should have felt familiar, almost comforting. Michael had traveled that winding path to his mother's house 1,000 times. The tall palms lining the streets, the soft hum of Los Angeles nightlife lingering beyond the hills. But tonight, everything felt different. The world outside the car window seemed muted, distant, almost unreal, like he was drifting through a memory instead of living inside a moment. Bill Bray, sitting in the front seat, glanced at Michael through the rearview mirror for the 10th time. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He could feel the tension radiating off Michael's body, the uneven breathing, the shaking hands resting on his lap, the way he stared out the window, without seeing anything at all. Almost there, Mike, Bill finally said. Michael nodded faintly, but his voice refused to come. The weight pressing down on his chest hadn't left him since the discovery at the rehearsal studio earlier that evening. That small, fragile piece of information, something he was never supposed to find, still clung to him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. His heart beat harder. His palms grew damp. And for a moment, he wondered if coming home had been a mistake. Not because of his mother, never because of her, but because the truth inside him felt too heavy to speak, too dangerous to release. But he needed her. That was the truth he couldn't deny. When the car finally rolled to a stop in front of Katherine Jackson's house, Michael inhaled shakily. The porch light glowed softly, the same warm hue he remembered from childhood, a light that followed him through scraped knees, broken hearts, sleepless nights, and moments when the world felt too big for him to hold. Bill stepped out and opened the rear door. You wanted to walk you in? Michael paused, then shook his head. No, thank you. I need to do this alone. Bill nodded, though worry etched deep lines across his face. I'll be right here if you need anything. Michael managed a small smile, then turned toward the porch. Each step felt heavier than the last. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs, his legs trembling beneath him, not from exhaustion, from fear. Fear what the truth might do once it left his lips. He knocked gently. The door opened almost instantly. Katherine stood there in her robe and slippers, eyes filling with relief the moment she saw him. Michael, baby, what are you doing here? It's almost midnight. He tried to answer, but the moment her arms wrapped around him, warm, familiar, grounding, something inside him cracked open. I had to come, Michael whispered into her shoulder. I had to. She held him tighter. Come inside. Tell me what happened. Michael stepped into the living room, the faint scent of chamomile tea drifting through the air. The room looked exactly as it had the last time he'd visited. Family photos on the wall, Soft cushions on the sofa, the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner. But tonight, it felt different, like the walls themselves were listening. Catherine sat beside him, her eyes soft but sharp, trained on every detail of his trembling hands and uneven breathing. Michael talked to me. He swallowed hard. His throat burned with words he hadn't yet found the courage to say. He ran a hand over his face, shaking. Mom, something happened tonight. Something I wasn't supposed to see. Her expression tightened with concern. What do you mean? Michael looked at the floor. I found something written down, something meant for someone else. And it made me realize I don't know who's really on my side anymore. Catherine leaned closer. What did you find, sweetheart? Michael hesitated. His pulse raced. His breaths grew shallow. The memory of that folded note, hidden beneath a stack of rehearsal schedules, flashed through his mind. A note written not by a stranger, but by someone close, someone he trusted. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Catherine reached for his hand. Michael, tell me. He took a shaky breath. It said. He stopped again, eyes welling with tears. Catherine squeezed his hand softly. You're safe here. You can tell me anything. Michael forced the words out. It said they were going to use me, Mom. That they were planning things without telling me. Things about my career, my life, my health. And it was someone I trusted. Someone I never thought could betray me. Catherine's eyes widened, not with shock, but with something deeper. Something she had feared for years. Michael, who wrote it? His lips trembled. I don't know yet, he whispered. But the handwriting, the clues, everything points to someone inside my own circle. A long silence stretched between them. Catherine placed a hand over her heart. Oh, Michael? He shook his head violently. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to believe. I don't know who's lying to me anymore. His voice cracked. I feel like I'm losing everything. Catherine pulled him into her arms again. You are not losing me, and you are not alone. Michael clung to her, the fear inside him trembling like a trapped animal. Mom, what if this time I can't fix it? She brushed her hand through his hair, slow, soothing, the same way she had when he was a child. The next morning arrived covered in a pale, gray light that filtered through the curtains of Michael's hotel room. But instead of waking with his usual quiet optimism, that soft, hopeful energy he carried even on difficult days, he opened his eyes with a heaviness he hadn't felt in years. The night's confrontation with his mother still echoed through his mind, every word replaying like a melody he couldn't silence. There are things about you the world will never understand. And there are things about me, he had answered quietly, that I never wanted the world to know. Catherine had looked at him with such tenderness that he almost broke down again. Almost, because some truths were too heavy even for her. And this morning, he felt them pressing against him harder than ever. He sat up slowly, rubbing his forehead as a soft knock sounded on the door. Michael? It's me. Randy's voice came through, gentle but tense. Michael hesitated. Randy was one of the few siblings he trusted fully. Someone who never tried to manipulate him, never push him for money, never use his name for their own gain. Still, Michael wasn't ready for anyone to see how fragile he felt. But Randy knocked again, softer this time. Mom called me. She said you weren't yourself last night. Let me in, Mike. Michael exhaled and opened the door. Randy stepped inside wearing jeans, a hoodie, and that expression siblings only wore when they were worried but didn't want to seem dramatic. You look exhausted, Randy said. Michael shrugged. Didn't sleep? Mom's really shaken up. She told me you said something about a truth you've been hiding. Something big. Mike, what did you mean? Michael turned his back to him and walked to the window. He didn't want to have this conversation. Not today. Not when everything inside him still felt raw and vulnerable. But Randy, unlike the others, wasn't someone he could dismiss with a smile. Randy, he whispered, have you ever carried something so long you can't tell if it was protecting you or destroying you? Randy frowned. Is this about the allegations? The money? The company? The pressure from the label? Michael shook his head slowly. No, this is older, deeper. It's something I never told anyone, not even Mom. Randy felt a chill crawl up the back of his neck. Then why now, Michael? Why suddenly feel like you have to say it? Michael turned, eyes filled with something between fear and resignation. Because I think someone else knows, he whispered. Those words dropped into the room like a stone. Randy stepped closer. Knows what? That secret, Michael said. The one I buried years ago. The one I thought I'd take to my grave. I don't know how they know, but they know. And they're trying to use it. Randy swallowed. Mike, who? Michael's gaze went distant, almost haunted. I don't know yet, but they've been leaving messages. Notes. Hints. Someone wants me to confess something I'm not ready to say. He walked to the bedside table and opened a drawer. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper folded 4 times. With trembling fingers, he handed it to Randy. Randy unfolded it. His eyes widened. 2 words, written in crooked, uneven handwriting. Not yet. Where did you get this? Randy asked, breathless. Under my pillow, Michael whispered. Last week. And another was taped to my dressing room mirror at rehearsal. Randy shook his head. This is insane. Are you sure someone isn't playing a joke? A crew member? A fan who got too close? Michael stared at him with a seriousness Randy rarely saw. This isn't a joke. This is a warning. Randy paced the room. Mike, you need security to sweep your hotel. Your rehearsals, Michael cut him off. Randy, the secret they're pressuring me about, if it comes out, it could change everything. The family, the legacy, my children. I've kept it buried for decades. And I'm afraid. He stopped. Afraid of what? Randy asked. Michael's voice cracked. Afraid that the world isn't ready to know who I really was. Randy felt a cold wave wash through him. This wasn't about scandals. This wasn't about fame. This was something deeply personal. Something Michael had held inside longer than anyone realized. And before he could ask again, a sharp knock sounded on the door. Both brothers froze. Michael's heartbeat quickened. Did you call someone? No, Randy whispered. Another knock, firmer this time. Then a voice neither of them recognized. Mr. Jackson, we need to speak with you. It's urgent. Randy stepped in front of his brother. Don't answer that. But Michael wasn't looking at the door. He was staring at the crumpled note in Randy's hand. The words seemed to pulse now as if alive. Not yet. Someone knew. Someone was waiting. Someone had chosen today to come for the truth. And Michael, trembling, whispered, It's them. Randy's eyes widened. Mike, who is them? Michael backed away slowly as footsteps began to move outside the door. They stopped right in front of it. The handle turned. Michael gasped, and the air inside Havenhurst that night felt unnaturally heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Michael moved slowly through the dimly lit hallway, palms sweating, heartbeat shallow. Every step seemed to echo louder than the last, bouncing off the framed photographs of his childhood. Frozen smiles that no longer matched the truth inside him. He had promised himself he would never speak the secret aloud. Not to his brothers, not to his friends, not even to his mother. But someone had discovered it, and now everything was falling apart. Michael reached the old rehearsal room, the one his father used years ago for their Jackson 5 practices. He hesitated at the door, staring at his trembling reflection in the dusty window pane. He barely recognized the man looking back, older, thinner, eyes filled with dread. He whispered to himself, Why now? Why after all these years? He pushed the door open. Inside, the lights were off except for a single lamp illuminating the center of the room. And sitting in a worn wooden chair, waiting for him silently, was the one person he hoped never to face regarding the secret. His sister, Rebby. Her eyes lifted slowly, swollen from crying. She held something in her hands, a small envelope, the same envelope Michael had hidden behind a false wall in the library decades ago. She shouldn't have found it. No one was supposed to. Michael, she whispered softly, voice shaking. Why didn't you tell us? Michael closed the door behind him, leaning against it for support. He could not speak. His throat tightened, his chest constricted. He felt like a child again, powerless, cornered, terrified. Rebbe rose from the chair, stepping closer with careful, gentle movements. "This was a burden you carried alone," she continued, "all these years." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Rebbe, I couldn't tell anyone. If people knew." She touched his arm. "We're not people. We're your family." He turned his face away, shame burning inside him. "Family is why I hid it." Her breath caught. "Michael, what does that mean?" He shook his head, backing away. "Please, don't ask me to explain it. I can't relive it. I promise myself." "Someone else knows," Rebbe whispered. The room felt like it tilted sideways. Michael's hand shook violently now. Who? Who else knows?" Rebbe hesitated. "Too long." "Rebbe," Michael insisted, stepping closer. "Who saw it?" She swallowed, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Catherine." Michael's heart almost stopped. No, not her. His mother. The only person he had ever wanted to protect from the truth. The only person he could not bear to disappoint. The only person who still saw him as more than the headlines, the scandals, the legend. He collapsed into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. Rebbe knelt beside him. She didn't say anything. She just cried. She said no mother should ever have to learn something like this from a piece of paper. Michael squeezed his eyes shut. "I was going to destroy it. I should have destroyed it. Why didn't I?" "Because part of you," Rebbe whispered, "knew the truth had to live somewhere." Michael trembled. "I didn't want to live anywhere." Before Rebbe could answer, the faint sound of a door opening echoed from the hallway outside. Michael's blood ran cold. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Approaching. Rebbe looked toward the door anxiously. "Michael, did you tell anyone else to meet you here?" He shook his head. "No." The footsteps stopped directly outside the rehearsal room. A silhouette darkened the bottom of the doorframe. Then a soft knock. One. Single. "Knock," Rebbe whispered. "Michael, who is that?" Michael didn't answer, because he already knew. He felt it in his bones. He felt it in the dread that curled up his spine. He felt it in the secret he had kept buried for decades. The person on the other side of that door was one of the reasons he hid the truth in the first place. The knob began to turn slowly. And Michael whispered, trembling, "This is the moment I prayed would never come." For several long seconds, Michael stood frozen in the doorway of the old rehearsal room, staring at the open journal resting on the dusty piano bench. He hadn't seen that journal in decades, hadn't even remembered leaving it there. Yet there it was, as if time had carefully preserved it, waiting for the moment when the truth inside it could no longer remain buried. His hands shook as he stepped closer. The journal was open to a page dated April 1986. A year marked by pressure, creation, transformation, and fear. A year Michael rarely spoke about. The handwriting was unmistakably his, though younger, sharper, more frantic. He leaned down, reading the first trembling line. "If anything ever happens to me, they will say it was an accident. But I know better." Michael's breath caught in his throat. The room felt suddenly too small, too cold, too alive. He touched the page gently, as if afraid the ink might smear under his fingers. He whispered, "I wrote this, but why?" Catherine approached slowly from behind, Her footsteps soft, but her presence grounding. Michael, what is that? He swallowed hard. Something I promised myself I would never talk about. A pause. Something I hoped no one would ever find. He turned the page. They want more than my music. They want control. They want to decide who I become, even who I stop being. Catherine closed her eyes as if bracing for a truth she feared. Who were you talking about, baby? Michael shook his head. People in the industry. People who said they wanted to shape me. People who tried to change every part of me, even my heart. They didn't want Michael. They wanted a version of me they could own. His hands trembled so violently that Catherine gently took the journal from him and held it herself. As she read silently, Michael's gaze drifted to the far corner of the room, where a single spotlight used to shine during rehearsals. Shadows stretched long against the walls, reminding him of nights when he danced until sunrise, nights when he felt unstoppable, untouchable, immortal, until the night he wrote those words. "Mom," he whispered, "I wasn't supposed to say any of this. I wasn't supposed to ever explain how scared I was back then." Catherine looked at him deeply, compassion filling her eyes. "You were a child carrying a mountain on your shoulders." He nodded slowly. "But I couldn't tell anyone. If I did, they would have taken everything. My music, my career, my freedom. I thought keeping silent was the only way to survive." Catherine reached for his hand. "Silence saves nothing, Michael. Silence only poisons a heart." He looked away. "That's why everything kept getting heavier. Why there were nights I couldn't sleep, nights I felt watched, followed, nights when I begged God to just let me disappear for a while." The confession hung in the air, fragile and raw. Catherine placed the journal back in his hands. "There's more. Read it." Michael hesitated, then turned to the next page. This one was shorter, written in a hurried script. "If anyone ever finds this, it means the truth came from me before I was ready to tell it. I pray they understand why I hid it. I pray they forgive me." Michael shut his eyes, tears forming. "I was 27. I thought my life wasn't mine anymore." He wasn't crying loudly, just quiet tears sliding down his cheeks. Tears of a man who had carried secrets not meant for one person to bear. Catherine placed her forehead gently against his. "You're safe now. You can tell the truth. No one owns you, Michael. Not anymore." But Michael's voice trembled as he answered, "That's not what scares me. What scares me is what happens when the truth is finally told." Catherine exhaled softly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." But even she didn't know that the truth contained in that journal was only the beginning. Michael carefully closed the cover, running his fingers along its edges. "I shouldn't have come back here. I thought this room would help me remember who I was, not what I was running from." "Baby, you came because your heart needed to," Catherine whispered. "You've hidden this pain for too long." Michael walked toward the piano, old, dusty, untouched for years. He sat down and pressed a single key. Its fragile, wavering sound echoed through the empty room. "I wrote a song here," he murmured. "A song no one ever heard. A song that explained everything I couldn't say in interviews or meetings or to anyone." He placed both hands on the keys but didn't play. "I called it The Truth Loves Shadows." Catherine blinked. "Michael, I've never heard of that." "No one has," he said, "because I burned the tapes." A beat of silence. Then Catherine whispered, "Why?" Michael looked at her with the saddest, most vulnerable expression she had ever seen on his face. "Because the truth was too dangerous." The room fell silent. But before Catherine could answer, the lights flickered. Once, then twice, before steadying again. Michael turned his head sharply. He wasn't imagining it. Someone else was in the building. The sun had barely risen when Michael sat quietly in the corner of the living room, his hands folded in his lap, the letter resting gently on the table before him. The house was still, almost reverent, as if it understood the weight of the truth that had surfaced the night before. Catherine, exhausted but calm, moved softly through the kitchen preparing tea, her eyes occasionally drifting toward her son with a mixture of heartbreak and fierce maternal pride. Michael hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, the revelation replayed. The discovery he had promised never to speak aloud, the truth he had vowed to protect until the end of his life. And yet, someone had found it, someone who was never meant to read it, hold it, or understand it. It had taken extraordinary courage for him to share even a fraction of it with Catherine. But the moment he did, something inside him shifted. Not broken, released. A pressure he had carried since childhood had quietly begun to unravel, thread by thread. Now, with morning light cutting through the half-open curtains, he finally reached for the letter. The handwriting felt foreign to him, though it was undeniably his. When he wrote it, he had been younger, wounded but determined, terrified but hopeful. Every word felt etched with a trembling mixture of fear and longing. He read the opening line again, the same one that had brought Catherine to tears the night before. If anyone ever reads this, it means I wasn't strong enough to say it out loud. Michael inhaled shakily. He had been strong. He had endured. He had survived things no one could imagine. And yet, for all the strength the world celebrated, this letter held a part of him he never dared show. Catherine returned with the tea, setting a cup beside him. "You don't have to read it again, baby." But Michael shook his head. I need to face what I wrote." She sat beside him, placing a gentle hand over his. The boy who wrote that letter, he didn't know the strength of the man sitting here now. Michael lowered his head, tears gathering at the corner of his eyes. "It doesn't feel that way, Mother. Not today." Silence settled between them. Soft, heavy, familiar. He read on. "All my life I was told to smile, to be grateful, to hide the pain behind the music. But if you're reading this, it means the pain grew louder than the applause." His fingers trembled. He clenched the edges of the paper, trying to steady the storm inside him. Catherine watched him gently. "You were a child, Michael, a child trying to survive a world that demanded too much." He exhaled, voice fragile. "But I kept everything inside. All of it. And when I finally tried to speak, no one wanted to hear the truth." "That's not your burden anymore," she whispered. But Michael wasn't convinced. Not yet. He read another line, one that struck deeper than all the others. "I'm afraid that if people see the real me, they will stop loving me." The words shook something inside him. He pressed a hand over his mouth as tears slipped free, quiet, unwilling, unstoppable. Catherine leaned in and held him, pulling her son into her arms the same way she had when he was a boy afraid of the dark. "You don't have to hide from me," she whispered. "Not now, not ever." Michael allowed himself to lean into her warmth, something he rarely permitted, something he desperately needed. His shoulders shook with the silent cries of a man who had carried the world too long, without ever laying it down. When he finally pulled away, his face was wet, but his eyes were clearer. "Someone found this letter." "Someone wasn't supposed to," he said, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "If it spreads, if the world reads it, they'll see everything I tried so hard to keep private." Catherine brushed his cheek gently. "Then let them see. Let them understand the truth they never bothered to ask for." "But they'll twist it," Michael whispered. "They always twist everything." She took his hand firmly. "Not if you speak first." Michael froze. Speak? Say it out loud? Reveal the pain he hid from the cameras, the crowds, the world? "I don't know if I can," he said. "You can," Catherine answered softly, "because you're not that frightened boy anymore. You survived him. You grew from him." Michael looked back at the letter. Slowly, something shifted inside him, a stirring of strength beneath the fear, a faint but undeniable sense of reclaiming something stolen long ago. Maybe she was right. Maybe the truth wasn't meant to be hidden forever. He folded the letter carefully, his hand steadier than before. "If I ever speak about it," he said quietly, "I want it to help someone. I want it to mean something." Catherine smiled. Not the smile of a mother encouraging her child, but the smile of a woman who finally saw her son freeing himself from chains he never should have carried. "It already does," she said, "because you faced it." For the first time since the night began, Michael felt a breath loosen in his chest. Not relief, not victory, but release. The letter hadn't exposed him. It had liberated him. As the morning light warmed his face, Michael placed the folded paper in his lap and whispered, "I'm ready to stop hiding." Outside, a soft breeze rustled the trees, as if the world itself exhaled with him. And somewhere deep inside, the boy who wrote the letter finally closed his eyes and